Funeral services, they were held today for two people who were killed in that deadly Metro North crash. Funeral held in Dobbs Ferry for 49-year-old Ellen Brody. Authorities say the mother of three, she was the driver of the SUV that was hit by the train on the railroad tracks in Valhalla. A service also held here for Eric Vandekar, 53-year-old father of two. He was a passenger on that train. And the authorities, the feds, are still investigating the cause of the accident. A lot of people believe what precipitated it, but the details still certainly under investigation. Today we learned that the rail crossing where the accident occurred underwent a series of safety upgrades in recent years. However, some planned work was never finished. Records obtained by AP show the state officials set aside money to install a third set of flashing warning lights at the crossings, but they were never put in. And earlier today, I spoke with Congressman Sean Patrick Maloney about the accident as well as the safety concerns. Here's part of our conversation. Congressman, thank you for a few minutes. And I know the last few days, really since the accident and then since you've been to the site here and you've talked to a lot of the principals involved and impacted by it. Before we get into the safety measures that I know going forward we ought to consider, when you see firsthand, as you have, the inside of that rail car, I guess it's a combination of being how horrific it was, but also miraculous that more people didn't lose their lives, right?
I'll tell you, I've never seen anything like it. And we just left the scene a few moments ago. The folks from the NTSB gave us a very thorough review of the situation and allowed us to actually enter the car itself and to see what transpired. It's very educational, and so I appreciate why they had to do that. It is a very difficult thing to see. And when you realize that a number of our neighbors lost their life there, it's as one of the people said, it's like looking into a coffin. And so it's a very sobering situation. What appears to have happened is that sections of the third rail dislodged, and more than a dozen of those sections, each 39 feet in length, entered the car. So when you stop and think about that, you had more than a dozen 39-foot sections of rail piercing into the passenger car and creating enormous damage. However, most of the people in that car were not killed. We believe there were about 20 people in the first car and about 15, while many injured, some seriously injured. 15 did get out of that car. And so the thinking is that the fire, which became very intense, was not immediate inside the passenger car. It was outside where the train struck the vehicle. Yep. And by all accounts, the engineer of the train conducted himself heroically. He not only stayed at the controls to stop the train for 30 full seconds, 1,000 feet after impacting the car, which was on fire, but he then tried to assist with the evacuation before succumbing to smoke inhalation. He was himself injured, though not anything life-threatening. But it's a pretty extraordinary thing he did, and all of us who depend on Metro North, who ride on Metro North, can identify with what a horrific scene it was.
Speaking of Metro North, and also some of the surrounding factors with the accident, Metro North's had a lot of questions as it relates to safety record. In this particular incident, do you look at this as just human error, pure and simple, or were certain things that happened after that human error avoidable?
Well, look, the way I look at it is that there is always something to learn. And while we understandably want to know if there was fault or if someone is to blame, really the more constructive thing is always, what do we do about it? You may remember that it was just 14 months ago that we had the terrible accident at Spuyten Duyvil. That was an instance where the train was moving too fast and derailed. In each of these cases, it would be very helpful to have remote control of the train. There's technology called positive train control. I've introduced legislation to speed up the implementation, open up sources of federal financing to get it done fast. That allows us to control trains remotely. So as in Spuyten Duyvil, if it's going too fast, we can stop it before it derails. People say, well, what does that have to do with a car being in the crossing? Well, if you have that IT infrastructure and you can control the train remotely, then you can also link it up to other types of sensors that are inexpensive and easy. Anybody who goes in a supermarket knows that the doors open and close. There's a simple little motion sensor. We have these at garage doors or in our homes. We also have the ability with lasers or with weight sensors to detect when something is in the way. If a signal fires through positive train control to the engineer, or even triggers a braking mechanism automatically, you save time. Yep. Right now, we depend on a human being to see that obstruction and to pull a brake. In this case, it seems like the engineer did it as fast as humanly possible. But when an object that big is moving at 60 miles an hour, there's just not enough time to slow it. And if you can get it going slower or stop it, you can lessen the severity or avoid these accidents. So I introduced legislation on Wednesday that would renew what's called the RLR grant program on the federal level. This is a program that existed in the past that is a $100 million a year program under my bill that would allow localities like Valhalla or any other to improve rail crossings in the way they see fit, to move it, to put a tunnel under it or an overpass over it, to install better signaling and other types of devices that can avoid crashes. Rail crossing safety is actually equally important to saving lives than avoiding derailments, as we saw in Spite and Dival. But taken together, the implementation of positive train control, better signaling and systems to detect objects in the crossings, and giving local communities the tools to do these improvements that they know make sense, where they make sense, because they're not going to do it everywhere, yep. But where it's most dangerous. We've lost life at this particular crossing before. So those things seem to me make common sense. I've got two bills, and I've got a good chance of getting them passed. I want people to know these are bipartisan. We passed the positive train control bill in the last Congress. It's been reintroduced. We're going to get it done in the next few weeks, and I believe we will also now, under my legislation, get reauthorized $100 million a year to improve rail crossing safety, and it's really important in our communities.
So do you think, and I said it with the congressman, let's separate this latest accident because there certainly seems to be some human error involved, and the investigation will fill in the details, I'm sure, but Metro North's had a spotty record. What do you attribute it most to? Is it a funding lack? Is it the oversight? Historically, what's been the problem?
Well, there were historical operational problems in that it didn't have the degree of professionalism, I think, in its operation. I think now we have to step back and take a very, very careful look after this and the Spite and Dival. You know, understanding there may be, as you say, some other factors, but this coupled with their other accidents over the last year is very, very troubling. And for like my district, where I have both the Hudson and the Harlem line, which are very major parts of our lives there, I think there needs to be a very, very careful reexamination of the operation and oversight of the railroad. Do we have the right people?
Yeah.
You know, it's not just Metro North. I mean, LIRR, I think, has a higher accident rate than Metro North does. New Jersey Transit has difficulties. It's the most densely populated suburban region in the country. And to run these trains through, especially where you have these grade level crossings where the road goes right up to the tracks. I mean, in a perfect world, you could do what you do in big cities and either put them away, like on the water's edge, right, so that they're not interfering
with
traffic,
talking, you know, infrastructure, which
but
people...
That's so prohibitively expensive. Yeah. I'm not sure what you can do. I mean, my thought is increase the lighting at these grade crossings, make the gates come down louder. The congressman had
a couple good ideas, and you get the sense, and he was telling me off camera too, that he thinks there's a good chance for some bipartisan support to be able to auto stop the trains. The conductor did everything right, it seems, and he was heroic too in getting people out. And he was saying, imagine, do in your head a 30 count from when the accident happened to when it finally came to a stop the train, and with all the third rail that was coming in there, and to him to, you know, try and personally evacuate people, and then before succumbing to smoke inhalation. Anyway, it was so. We have not heard the end of
Richard, I just want you to think about this. Obviously, I'm not talking about this specific incident, but in Rockland County, where I reside, there are several locations, mostly near Route 59, a major thoroughfare, where there are crossings. And you don't have, think about this, you don't have much time, because every night just about I have to go over one. And when there's rush hour traffic, you're standing there, and then all of a sudden you hear ding, 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 and it starts coming down within seconds. You don't have much time.
I think that's
And so, what are you to do? And if you're caught, if you're on the back side of it, then you're outside of it. It's not a problem. But in this case, the woman's car was hit. She's on the inside, and it's snow. You get stuck trying to get over the snow on the tracks.
The one thing, this is not a panacea, but the guardrails, if you've learned anything, that they are intended to shear. So God forbid you're in the situation that Dominic described that the woman was in, back up, back up over it. It will not stop the vehicle. It'll break off on the vehicle. In fact, that's what the MTA also recommends. All right, I want to turn to Albany now, where the last 15 days, to put it politely, have been very eventful. And as we all know, you have a new speaker here, the Bronx Assemblyman Carl Hastie has taken over. If you can put in context, now that you've finally taken a breath, would you say that how would you describe relief in or fear of the unknown about what could happen next, that more shoes could drop here? How would you describe the mood of the legislature in Albany right now?
Well, I think in the Assembly there really is tremendous relief. Tremendous. And I've talked to some of my Republican colleagues this week as well. First place, we didn't do anything for a month. Nothing. Literally did not take a vote, did not have a committee meeting. We had 1 month of no activity. That's not acceptable. So now we had committee meetings.
Yep.
We were on the floor last week. We elected the speaker. We had a slow roll call. Everyone spoke. We had a bipartisan reception. He announced committee chairs. He did his committee appointments. He's going to be making some other sort of reform-focused announcements. I think there's a sense of we got past a very tough time in a reasonably short amount of time. It was about 15 days. And we are ready to go back to work. By the way, we have a very big budget where the governor has made a lot of proposals which I think members do not like. And we have to be unified in order to negotiate.
Well, if I could, let's tell everybody what the governor actually had to say about the consequences if part of that budget, specifically the reforms, weren't passed here. Take a listen.
Either pass my budget or shut down the government. As you recall, President Clinton had a fundamental disagreement with Speaker Gingrich, and that's what it came to. Either pass the budget or shut down the government, and they shut down the government. I was there. It was ugly, but sometimes ugly is necessary. Change is disruptive, and transformative change is highly disruptive. And make no mistake, this will be highly disruptive. So I will not sign a budget that does not have an ethics plan as outlined in my proposal that addresses the current problems in the system.
We were joking a little yesterday since the governor was going to shut down the Moreland Commission, demanding this. But I do ask this question without knowing necessarily the answer, since when people voted for the speaker, after Mr. Hastie, the second most votes was for Preet Bharara. So, two. I know, I was trying to play on the numbers there, but my point is, do people want to pass this, or people find it really flawed, or they don't like hearing it from the governor here, that he's the one saying my way or the highway?
Well, one, I don't think it's constructive to talk the way he spoke. He had a budget which didn't have all this in it before, which he gave us. Now he's going to add it to his budget. All of a sudden, it's make or break. It wasn't make or break when he did the first budget. Now he's going to make it either you go my way or the highway. The other thing is, this proposal of his, I happen to think, we haven't seen the budget language, it doesn't have public financing of campaigns. It doesn't get rid of the LLC exception, which now is like a big exception you could drive a truck through. So I think, let's see what the language is. I think there's a tremendous desire, certainly in the Assembly, after what we've been through, to have real ethics reform. It is not helpful to have a hammer over your head and say, my way or the highway. Now, all of a sudden now, I've decided. I think it would be better if we moved in a more constructive way. I am a reformer and totally for ethics reform. As I said before, we need to clarify the laws because some things are unethical and not illegal.
Are you saying the governor's proposal lacks teeth when it comes to ethics reform?
We haven't seen the language yet.
Well, he's outlined 5 broad strokes.
Well, I don't think it includes all the elements of what I think real reform requires.
You think good or bad politics, Dominic, what the governor did?
It's straight politics, as simple as that. And I'm translating what the Assemblywoman just said. I don't mean to put words in her mouth, but read between the lines.
But there does seem to be a little bit of people saying, wait a minute, you were the same guy who shut down the commission, now you want it.
Right.
Does it come off as hypocrisy, or is it just a smart play?
Of course it does.
Yeah.
And this is why folks are tuned out to the world of politics. This is why folks don't want to get involved. You have a governor who ran on a platform of fighting corruption, got in, shut down the corruption panel. All these officials have been arrested, and now he says, do this or no budget. Come on.
It's good imaging for him. I mean, people want
It's not good
people want
imaging.
reform. They want an end to corruption. Look, I'm so opposed to corruption. It's my way or the highway. It's
You know, the one thing I would say is, if you talk to ordinary people who are not engaged in politics, who have a fair degree or a large degree of cynicism, honestly, if you say to them, you know, I'm doing my best to clean up Albany, and these are the problems. Some things aren't clear. Some things should be prohibited. We have some bad apples. I agree with Dominic. They accept it's an imperfect place and we should make it better. They do say get rid of the crooks, and there's too many of them, but I don't think they take kindly to the bullying, and it looks a little like Christie.
But Richard, I know you got to take a break. I just want to say this one thing, because Mr. Brodsky, who's not here tonight, when I refer to all the crooks in Albany, he wonders what I'm talking about. You just heard a member of the Assembly refer to several in office.
Well, it's hard to debate that since
Yes,
they've been.
I
We
love
just led
Richard,
with
but
Malcolm
come on.
Smith, going away for a stretch. All right, we come back. Somebody else has had a bad week. Brian Williams, the anchor of NBC, under some intense fire for, let's just say, stretching the truth about his experience on board a helicopter in Iraq. Now he's facing even more hot water over a story surrounding Hurricane Katrina. One of the most respected men in our business. Can he recover with his reputation after this? We'll be right back. And later, we will also be doing our quiz here. We asked you questions on current events. Toll-free lines open right now, 387-666-2428. Join our game here, and yes, you could win a mug.